Let's talk about one specific aspect of upgrading a budget bike, because over the years I've upgraded gosh knows how many bikes on this channel, and quite a few of my upgrade videos are not necessarily how-tos, but they're a how I do things. I'll walk you through my process. But there is one important aspect of budget upgrade, especially with the crankset, that I don't talk about a lot, and that is the chain line. The chain line is measured from an invisible line that starts at the center of the frame and works its way all the way back. Rather than a bunch of finger pointing, let me show you on an illustration why I chose a white background for a white bike so the red would show up. The center line. The chain line, represented here via a blue line, is another invisible line, and depending upon the specific setup, there are some typical depths. Now note that I said typical, emphasis on the typical, because at least in the budget bike world, it's not an absolute rule. I'll say that carries over even more expensive bikes sometimes, at least in my experience, so clear as mud, right? Well, let me help you out. Let me show you what I do to gauge chain line when I'm upgrading a bike. Instead of going with the center axis and hoping that I got it right, because a couple of millimeters is a big deal here, I use a caliper, but I use the other end of the caliper, and I measure from the seat tube to the chain, or if I'm swapping chains, to the chain ring. Because I know in this case the bike worked fine from the factory, so the factory measurement's going to give me a baseline, and that is negative 31.2 negative because I'm judging depth. So that would give me my invisible center line and my invisible chain line completely through the bike. Now in this case I'm keeping this factory rear group set. It's functional, but I am changing the crank set. And that's where a couple of millimeters could make a big difference, especially being that it's an external bearing bottom bracket, so I really have to pay close attention to this. So let me give you just a little taste of what happens here through the process, and I'm not going to go step by step on how to swap out a crank set or bottom bracket. I have videos on that, but I will tell you I do have a brand new bottom bracket removal tool. Was there anything wrong with my old removal tool, the Ohmers I've used for years? No, other than I lost it. When I looked, the Ohmers was out of stock, so I went shopping for another, and I ended up on this. This is Boy or Boyi, B-O-Y-I. I wasn't really sure until I looked on the bottom of the card. Saw the -boy.com there. So this is definitely a Boy bottom bracket removal tool, which makes sense because it came with a dangler. Now I've seen these before, but my old tool didn't use one, so if you watched any of the videos and wonder what in the world is that, well, let me show you. Actually, I can show you with the instructions. While the base tool can be worked with a wrench, that little part, it goes through the middle. You know, it's only now I'm realizing I probably shouldn't have called it a dangler. But it all functions in this area, inside the teeth of the bottom bracket. But first, I have to get this zip tie off, and wouldn't you know it, just like everything else, I've really been bad at tool management recently. I can't even find my snippers, but plastic zip ties are no match for a 79-cent Harbor Freight blade. So now that the Boy's ready for its first use, you'll see it has teeth, and the bottom bracket also has teeth. They're just recessed. But like magic, almost as if fate had pushed the two together, it's a perfect fit. The problem is, if you only have a wrench to get this working, well, it's a very loose fit, so it's going to be problematic, like way sweary kind of problematic. And that's where that extra part comes in. It threads into the hole that the crank would be held in place by. You can see I put the tool in place, I thread it into the bottom bracket, and once it's ran down far enough, that little serrated area, that's a thumb screw. And just a little tightening here, you can see just how secure the hold is with that simple thumb screw tightening. I mean, I gotta admit, it seems to be a useful tool. The only problem is, I don't particularly trust these little shafts. I mean, it is a shaft with a lot of lateral torque on it, and if I'm using it, it means I have to use a wrench on the base tool and on a bike like this one. With boost rear spacing on a freakishly small bottom bracket, there's just not a lot of room, so I'm definitely not going to use this half of the tool on this particular project. But I will use the main part of the tool, my boy, and I'm going to use an impact driver. It makes all this way easier. It's definitely going to be easier than the crank arm removal on this particular bike. I have a video on that if you want to watch it. Link down in the description. I said this isn't a how-to, and it's not, but I will remove the other side crank arm just to show you the process because the measurement's going to come in so important. Some of us visual learners. So here we go. Have the crank arm off. I move the chain out of the way because I'm keeping this chain. I would break it otherwise, and then thread in a new chain. The bottom bracket removal. I said I use my Boy tool and I use an impact driver. This is my 1/2-inch Craftsman. I've never come across a bottom bracket this combo wouldn't break. Now on the left side, this is lefty loosey. So I'm going to set it to left rotation. You can see, look at that. This tool and the impact driver, so easy, it's almost cheating. And then we get a first look at the bottom bracket on these FS.2 Ozark Trail mountain bikes sealed bearing bottom brackets. But that's just on the left side of the bottom bracket. Back onto the right side, there's still a cup in here. We need to get that off. So this is the right side, the crank arm side, the chain side, and this one's going to be exactly opposite. It was lefty-loosey. This one's righty-loosey. So I'm going to set it to right like I would be tightening, but you can see that is actually removing, and once again, it's a cakewalk with this combo, and that's why I use it. Now I can pull out the entire bottom bracket, and look at that, a Neko. I used to see these all the time on hyper mountain bikes, so it's nice to see that Walmart's using them on their Ozark Trail. And the metal shavings, that is from that crank arm where they cut that off. There's a hole in the middle of the bottom bracket down there. The metal shavings came in from the bottom, and by the way, that bottom bracket, 68mm verified for this bike. Boost spacing at the rear. It's a very odd combo. I'm going to clean all this out, make sure I don't have any more metal shavings there. That's the hole I was talking about. I was sawing the crank arm with the bike upside down. That's the entry point for the metal shavings. But now that I've got all that cleaned out, I have my new bottom bracket. Part of an IXF crank set, my favorites. They come with the spacers to work with any 68 or 73mm setup that I've encountered. And sometimes the spacer count doesn't line up by the book. In this case, it did. It's a 68mm bottom bracket, 2 spacers on the drive side, 1 on the non-drive side, and look at this, a 1.1mm difference. I had 2mm to play with, so I'm in the safe zone. That means from front to back on this bike, the center line is going to be paralleled with the chain line for proper function. If you've ever put something together, it's been jumping around at the back and you couldn't ever get it dialed in, you might have chainline problems. Something I don't think I've really talked about in a video, at least in depth, but something very important, and this video is how I do it. So drop me a note down in the comments and let me know if this video helped you out. Did you know the chainline was a thing? If you did, how do you measure it? Do you go by the invisible center line, or do you use a reference point like I did? Let me hear it. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.